Hi, Matt Stait here for the Festival of Martial Arts, and today we're talking to Ceri Phelps. Hello, Ceri, how are you?
Hi, I'm very good. Thanks, Matt.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for coming along and having a chat with us today. I start these the same way every time, which is, could you please give an overview of yourself and what you do for those that may not have heard of you?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Ceri Phelps. I've been doing martial arts for around 38 years now. I started in Shotokan Karate as a young lad. Did that for like 20 years on and off. Competed at international level in world and European championships. I was Welsh champion in '96. Alongside that, around 1994, I trained with Jeff Thompson in Bristol. It was the early days when they first started the BCA. I'd seen an ad in Combat magazine back in the day. I think it was out to knock someone out, which attracted me to the ad. So yeah, went along to that. That was a bit of a light bulb sort of moment for me. Obviously, the stuff that Jeff was speaking about and everything at the time, or the preemptive striking stuff and everything. But even though I did that at the time, I was a brown belt. I was close to doing my black belt. I was really into my competition karate. I come away from that seminar. And ironically, I didn't then to train with him for a bit again. I sort of concentrated on my karate. Ended up changing jobs. So I had to leave the competition karate for a bit. Done some boxing for a few years. I didn't compete in boxing. But I trained a lot with good amateurs and pros and stuff. Did that for a few years. Trained with Jeff a few more times in the late 90s. Went back to karate a little bit, but couldn't quite get back to the level I was at due to work and things at the time. And around 2004 time, I decided on I wanted to sort of teach self-defense, so started looking into that, hopefully maybe do it as a career. I remember speaking to Peter Considine at the time. And what I found was there wasn't like really a qualification out there as a self-defense instructor. The people who were doing it, most of them who were good people doing it, were sort of like, they had a background in martial arts and then they started to just like teach, put their own little system together. So I did a little bit of that. I started a little bit of teaching, but at the time I didn't feel confident enough, I suppose. I wanted to go under my own banner, under my own name. So my best mate and now my business partner, we've done martial arts together all our lives. He was doing it with me. And then I heard about Krav Maga, sort of got involved with that then. Went on an instructor course in 2008. It's not one of these Mickey Mouse instructor courses. It's 180 hours, sort of 23 days, a very professional course. And I fell in love with it, really. Did that, fell in love with it. Came out and been teaching that since. Went full-time teaching in 2010, I think. Yeah, 2010. After doing Krav, I sort of started studying more martial arts because Krav is like it's a very complete system. There's loads in there. So I started doing Muay Thai. If I backpedal a bit, I started doing BJJ in 2005. I'm not very good at it. I'm still only a blue belt 4 stripe. So probably one of the longest blue belts ever. But it's never been like my first thing. It's always been like sort of a second gig thing for me or whatever. But I really enjoy that. I still do a little bit of it. I've always kept my hand in it. And now I've ended up here today. I've also done a little bit of wrestling the last couple of years. So I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, I would say. Master of none.
Yeah, it's a long journey. And what's interesting about it is that there's a lot of similarities with a lot of people that I talk to in regards to their journey, in that people of a certain age, they tended to start in a traditional sort of format. Because that's what was available at the time. There was a few flavors of martial arts, and that was your lot back then when we started.
Yeah.
But then there was that seminal shift in the way that we all looked at the world when Jeff's book started coming out and Jeff started coming on the circuit and stuff. And yeah, that's a real sort of pattern that a lot of people have kind of followed through. And Jeff holds a lot of responsibility for changing the face of British martial arts. I think, he really did shift how a lot of people thought about things, which is, the guy's a legend, and rightly so, deserves to be there. So you talked about moving out of Shotokan and into the sort of reality-based stuff, and again, I've talked about this with a number of different people there, and everyone's got their own sort of version on it. But then you said you tried to sort of come back into the karate a few years later.
Yeah, I felt it unfinished business, I suppose. With the sports side of it, I enjoyed competing. When it got cut short, I mean, when I was about 24 at the time, in '96, I won the Welsh Championships. 2 weeks after I won that, I beat the British champions. So I was starting to do well. And then within like a month after that, I got offered a job promotion, took the job. Obviously, it was a lot more pay and stuff. So that's what I did as a young lad. But it really knocked all my martial arts on the head. It came with a lot of pressure, a lot of working hours. And in the long run, it turned out, I mean, I learned an experience from it, but it turned out not to be such a good thing. In amongst that, sort of the late 90s, I did train with Jeff a couple of times. But like I say, I went boxing for a few years. And I ended up going back to karate. I wanted to get back. I wanted to try and prove that I could still do it or whatever. But when I went back, I couldn't commit to the training as much because of the shift work I was doing at the time. So I ended up, I got back to the Welsh squad and everything, but I was getting beat by people who I felt I could beat if I was training as much as they were. And in the end, the last time I fought, I think it was 2004. I didn't get picked. I got to the quarterfinals. I lost the eventual winner. So I was thereabouts. I weren't far away. But I ended up not getting picked for the World Championships, which were in Chicago that year. And that was like the final nail in the coffin. It wasn't sour grapes or nothing. I don't know things about that decision. And it's just that was what I was already thinking about, knocking it on the head and moving on to other things. And that was the final part for me, really. Then when that happened, it was like, okay, this is it now. It's time for me to move on. I spoke to my instructor because at the time I was a black belt. I was teaching at the club. I think he wanted me to take over the club eventually. And I ended up, I just said, look, I want to do other systems. There's so much out there I'd like to learn. And that was it, really. So I left. I started then going on a quest. I trained with a few instructors. I was looking for more the reality stuff at the time. That was I was kind of really interested in. I think it's like most of us back in the day when you were doing systems, you wanted to find out what really worked. And it's like that thing, that golden nugget we're all looking for, what really works. So I started searching for that. I ended up doing BJJ. Obviously, that's not a reality thing, but I ended up doing that as well because the popularity of MMA was coming along. And like I said, I ended up in Krav Maga then, and sort of fell in love with that. So at the time, for me, I felt like I needed the backing of a big system. I didn't feel I had the confidence to do it on my own, under my own name, under my own banner. So when I found Krav Maga, I felt like it was a big system, like Aikido, like Judo, like karate, like Taekwondo, and so on. But it was like a big system based around reality self-defense. So yeah, that was it. And I fell in love with it. I thought, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been searching for. And yeah, the rest is history, so to speak.
Yeah. So with the Krav then, because again, Krav blew up and became absolutely huge over a period of time there, and again, a huge marketing machine, incredibly interesting, the development of that and how that's sort of grown into what it is now today. But for yourself, coming from a traditional background, How did you find the transition into Krav? Because obviously the mindset's different, the mechanics are slightly different, you know. So how did that work for you?
I didn't find it too hard, to be honest. I was quite good at, I think, adapting. Like if I went to someone to learn something, I wasn't one of these guys who like, but we would do it this way. I'd always sort of, get it, like, like for example, when I went boxing, I took the boxing. I wasn't a great boxer, but I didn't fight boxing like I did karate. I sort of like tried to become a boxer, if that makes sense. So I'm quite good at sort of doing that, I think. So it wasn't too difficult for me at all, that transition. Funny enough, there was a guy on the same course who was a very high level taekwondo guy. He'd been European champion a few times. Very good martial artist from Ireland. I believe he's the Irish coach and everything now. And he struggled. He'd only done taekwondo. He'd never done nothing else. And he struggled to make that transition, what you're talking about. But yeah, for me, it was easy enough. I didn't find it that difficult, to be honest. Like I said, I don't know. I just thought I was used to adapting to different things. I had done other things at that time. So yeah, I didn't find that too difficult, to be honest.
So is now what you teach essentially Krav, or have you sort of brought all of the things over the years together to create this melting pot?
Yeah, it's Krav, but yeah, I have brought all my experiences in. Krav's very fragmented system. There's been loads of splits in the system. So you got a lot of people. There's some good stuff out there. There's some bad stuff out there. And like you said, it became very popular. So there was a lot of people labeling everything Krav Maga. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't so much. But I started off with the IKMF, which is the International Krav Maga Federation. There was a big split in the organization not long after I was involved, around 2009, 2010. I only got involved in 2007, 2008. So there was a big split in the organization. The usual politics, the head guy, it was a non-profit organization, and the head guy at the time, Ayal Yanalov, got voted off. Basically, he spent 20 years of his life spreading it all around the world. And then he basically got kicked out of his own organization. The problem was, what happened was most people, or most of the good people, went with Ayal. So he then formed Krav Maga Global, KMG, in 2010. And I decided at the time to go with Ayal. And for me, it turned out a good decision. They've gone from strength to strength. They did become a bit more of a commercial kind of Krav Maga, but the standard stayed really good. And what I like about them is they've kept evolving. So they changed the curriculum a bit in 2010, and they changed it again over the pandemic, which was good. They've added a lot more, let's call it MMA stuff, I suppose. So it's evolved with the times, a lot more. It's not perfect, like most things are not perfect, I suppose, but it's a lot better now, in my opinion. And I was evolving as well, and that kind of evolved alongside me. So I was happy to stay with them. I'm quite high up in the system, like as a Krav instructor. I'm one of the sort of the top guys in the UK. I examine other instructors, that sort of thing. So I know I've got to that point where I'm not learning loads of new stuff with the system now. I'm an expert too in the system, which is not as super high. It's one of the highest in the UK, but I should be higher, really. I've missed a few gradings I should have done. But I still like being involved in the system, but I've added a lot of my own stuff in, but they've gone that way themselves, which is great. So yeah, I'm pleased with where it's at the moment.
Yeah, no, good. Because again, as you say, Krav is an interesting thing in this, because it, like, as with karate, as with other things, it's once it started gaining traction and gaining in size, politics took over and it started splitting. Yeah. And again, I went through all of that and saw all of that myself at the time, and watched all these things unfold over the years. And it's interesting now to see sort of how that's settling down, because the fact that Krav isn't isn't a actual copyrighted name. It's a bit like the term kung fu. Anyone can use it if they so wish as a catch-all. And so that, that leads to all kinds of different things. So it's interesting to see the different flavors, the different interpretations, and the different ways that people have brought what they do into it, which has happened a lot. Lots of Krav people have brought their previous histories in, and that's what makes it kind of fun, seeing the new people and the new ways of doing things. So so that brings us then into what are we hoping to see from you at the festival itself?
Well, to be honest, I haven't decided on one thing. I could do more or less anything, really. I could teach it more or less any subject. From my point of view, I think it'd be best to have a variety of things. I mean, I don't know how many instructors you're going to end up there, but obviously, I'd like to teach something. I mean, for example, if I said, I'll do preemptive striking, and everyone's going to teach preemptive striking, is, for the people there, it'd be better to have a variation of things. So I don't know. I could do whatever, really, whatever people are teaching. I mean, obviously, there's certain things I would say are not my strong point. For exactly like, I don't know, like throwing or something in judo. Like I can grapple and stuff, and I know how to do the odd throw, but I'm certainly not an expert in that. So I wouldn't want to teach. And sure, there's a lot of people out there a lot better than me at that sort of thing. So I suppose whatever we can find a subject that we feel maybe is not being taught, and I could do that, I think.
Okay.
I mean, I certainly do stuff. I mean, I don't know. You obviously probably know this more than me of what I don't know if you've got an idea of what other people are teaching.
Yeah, to a degree, but there's a lot of conversations around things that you've just said, as in people want to do something that not everyone necessarily else is doing, but also it's the flavor of who's there at the time, who's on the mats at the time, and sort of get that. It's just like an overview, really. I mean, the idea is so that the whole point of these conversations is so that people that are coming to the festival but may not necessarily know all the names and styles can have a little look at some of the videos, have a little look at the blurb, and say, actually, I quite fancy having a go at that. And so that's kind of what it's for, really. So it doesn't. We don't have to pin anything down. Don't have to write anything in stone right now.
Yeah, I mean, with Krav Maga, the reality of it is, whatever subject you would come up with, the way I've been taught Krav Maga, I would argue that I would say, well, that's Krav Maga. So you know what I mean? If it's striking, grappling, it could be any subject: weapon defense, multiple attackers, whatever, anything. You can kind of say that's Krav Maga. So we are done well. We are a jack of all trades, as I said. So yeah, I could do more or less anything, I suppose, any subject. I mean, I can come up with a list of subjects, obviously. I just like to do something different to everyone else, or not that we're all doing exactly the same thing, that's all. I could certainly do something on, for example, pistol, gun disarming, that kind of thing. I'm assuming no one else is doing that, but I don't know. Knife threats, whatever, really, you know what I mean? So the weapons, we do good stuff getting up off the ground, against a standing attacker, that sort of thing. All sorts, really. Whatever. I mean, we can liaise back and forth. If there's something you'd like me to do, or if you're happy for me to just come up with something, I'll come up with something on my own.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever works for you, really. So okay, so I think we can say that it's kind of open-ended in that regard, but it'll be something interesting and fun. That's kind of the main deal with this. Cool. Right. So how can if people want to get in touch with you before the festival itself, how can they find you?
Probably best is just to look. We got a website, which is www.totalselfprotection.com.
Okay.
And the email is info@totalselfprotection.com.
Okay. So, I will I'll make sure that I put that in the blurb in the comments so that people can find you that way. And thank you very much for agreeing to come along and be part of the instructor team at the festival. And we look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. Pleasure.